Hello, Dr. Talamantes and fellow classmates. My name is Abril Obregard, and I will be presenting what is dual language education and making connections as to what I learned during my dual language education class, BED 5335. I hope you enjoy. Thank you. We are going to talk about the original models of bilingual education, and in the article Two-Way Dual Language Education, written by Elena Izquierdo 2011, it explains that English language learners are placed in bilingual educational programs such as English as a second language. And it is a basic model of transitional model, which has the same goal in mind as the dual language education, where they use some of the first language to learn English. But I would like to touch bases about that because when I first immigrated to the United States, I was placed in a transitional model. And I was segregated from the children that could speak English. And we were looked upon as the children who could not speak English. Well, then we read another article where it talked about the Isleta Independent School District superintendent arguing that when the students arrive to the middle school, they are taught in English only. So these English language learners are being left behind because the results shows that half of the district are non-English speakers that are not meeting the academic proficiency. And this was written by Samuels in 2016. This is one of the reasons why I am a big advocate about the dual language education. It is a form of bilingual education in which students develop biliteracy and they have high academic content in two different languages. Instead of being isolated like I was, the English language learners from their native English-speaking peers, they come and they work together in a classroom collaboratively, and the curriculum is conducted in both languages. The research is demonstrating that the dual language programs do close the achievement gap because rather than being a subtractive model, it is an additive model. And so English language learners get to learn the same as the English speakers. What is dual language? Well, according to Thomas and Collier 2012, dual language is described as an additive model of bilingual schooling for English learners. Rather than subtracting the partner language, they value the partner language. The one-way and two-way models are equally effective long-term. Why? Because the one-way refers to one language group receiving their schooling through their partner language in another language. In the two-way, it refers to an integrated model consisting of two language groups receiving their schooling through their two languages. They're not being separated. It is also known as an enrichment model because it challenges the standards in the core content areas while enriching the development of fluency and literacy in both languages. So, talking about global awareness, in the video Language and Globalization, Francisca Sanchez, the Associate Superintendent for the San Francisco School District, explains how now in the 21st century, there's an increasing demand for multilingual skills in the workforce. In this global economy, the business and the scientific communities, along with the government sectors, are hiring what we call the real player in the world. And also in the video, a look inside Dual Language Classrooms 2012, Jill Fracca, the Sobrato Early Academic Language Facilitator, explains how in the dual language classrooms, the students are each other's models, and they are scoring at higher levels on the California English Language Development Tests. Well, when proud and confident and excited students talk about how amazing this dual language program is, guess who becomes the best advocates? Us, the parents. We become the most powerful supporters for the dual language programs. And so I wanted to include a self-narrated video that I produced for this class to remind us about how important it is to create community of dual language educators. Speaking in Tongues, Patchwork Films producer. Let's meet Jason. So Jason's parents first immigrated to the United States, and they don't speak English in this film. And so that reminds me of my story, because my parents immigrated to the United States and they couldn't speak English, just like Jose, Jason's father. And so for Jason's father, it is very important that his son does not lose his Spanish, because if he loses his Spanish, he won't be able to communicate with his family. And so by the end of the film, Jason says that he values the fact that he has the opportunity of attending school, and that he values that he was able to speak Spanish for his parents. Meet Kelly in Speaking in Tongues. Kelly is the 6th grade student learning Cantonese in dual language education. Her parents cannot speak Chinese, and therefore Jenny, her mother, cannot communicate with her grandmother because of the language barrier. In the film, you can see that Kelly is very glad that she's able to spend time with her grandmother because she's able to communicate with her. And that's one of the things that I really enjoyed from the film, that I was able to connect with it. I saw myself in Kelly. I was able to speak Spanish to my grandmother, and we spent many, many times together in the kitchen cooking for the family. And that is something that I will always value. And this is one of the reasons why dual language is very important in our education system. In Speaking in Tongues. So Durrell and his mother, she says that she put him in a dual language education because she wants more options for him, and this translates to higher academic achievement. She says that some of the parents might be skeptical that 90% of the time is being spent in the beginning in the Chinese and 10% in English. But you can see EJ, she's very excited when Durrell is able to hold a conversation with a Chinese lady at the store, and she starts seeing that there's a positive outlook for her son's future. She sees many great opportunities for Durrell because he's learning biliteracy and bilingualism. And so this is very important for his mother to speak Mandarin and English. I believe that most parents want the best and most success for their children, and I think this is what EJ sees in this dual language program for her son. Tongues, meeting Julian. And so Julian's parents are extremely supportive of Julian learning Chinese language because they want him to be a good world citizen. Julian is extremely advanced in his dual language education. He feels that he is part of the Chinese culture, and he is able to travel to China and put his education into perspective, and he was able to have full conversations with Chinese people. When he comes back, he says, I want to go back, and he's going to pursue a career that is going to allow him to continue his Chinese skills as an aerospace engineer. I included a self-narrated video about various perspectives of dual language education. What are the goals of the dual language education? Well, dual language programs have been associated with positive influences on achievement to include increased confidence, a higher test score, and it also gives you an advantage in the job market. It is most powerful school reform because if it's well implemented, it creates high academic achievements. So I'm going to talk about the 3 Bs for all participating students: the bilingualism, the biliteracy, and the biculturalism. Those are some of the goals of the dual language program, meaning that you can speak, you can write, and that you have social cultural competence. Also, there are 2 languages that are required through all subjects of the curriculum, and this was from Thomas and Collier 2012. What are some of the benefits of the dual language program? Well, students get higher academic performance, greater cognitive development in mental flexibility and creativity, high levels of proficiency in the partner language and in English. There's positive cross-cultural attitudes and behaviors. There's enhanced career opportunities. And you can see that I submitted a source from benefits of being bilingual. Let's talk about the language distribution model. And so, although there's the 90-10 model, the 80-20, the 70-30, the 60-40, the 50-50, I want to concentrate on talking about the 90-10 and the 50-50. And according to Thomas and Collier, the 90-10 model begins by immersing the students 90% of the time of instruction in the partner language first. And then it gradually increases instructional time in English. For example, in kindergarten, the children will speak Spanish 90% of the time and 10% in English. By first grade, 80 and 20% of English, and so forth. The 50-50 model offers an equal percentage of instructional time in English and in the partner language. The dual language program also has non-negotiables, which means that a minimum of 50% to a maximum of 90% of daily instruction of the non-English language for all students. Strategic separation of the languages on the part of the instruction, which means no translation. And it needs to be from kindergarten to 5th grade with K through 12 encouraged. And these all come from Thomas and Collier 2012. So what does research say about dual language? Well, Thomas and Collier created what is called the graph. And it was a longitudinal experiment. And in the graph, if you notice, all the solid lines represent English learners. And so the dotted line represents the average performance of the native English speakers across the United States on the English reading exam at each grade level. And the directions of the lines are very important. If you notice, in the very beginning of the graph, they all start about the same at an equal pace. But if you really look into the graph, the two-way dual language made it all the way to the 64 average, while the ESL pullout went down to 24%. So it automatically says that the dual language programs strive for high academic achievement, and it shows on the tests because it's closing that academic achievement gap. We also touched bases on the guiding principles for dual language education. And all of the strands that I will be talking about come from the guiding principles for dual language education 2018. So beginning with strand 1, it's the program structure. And it has 4 principles, which talk about program aspects to work together to achieve academic achievement, bilingualism and biliteracy, and social cultural competence. Talks about the program ensuring equity for all groups and how the program has a strong and effective leadership. The curriculum Strand 2 contains 3 principles, and it talks about developing and revising high-quality curriculum, maintaining standards, and promoting the 3 core goals of dual language, also integrating technology to enhance the learning. Strand 3 of the guiding principles talks about instruction. It has 4 principles, and it is basically derived from research-based principles of dual language to ensure the fidelity to the model. Instruction supports the 3 core goals of the dual language education. Instruction is student-centered, and the staff integrates technology to enhance the learning process. The Strand 4 talks about assessment, testing, and accountability, which has 5 principles, and it creates and it maintains a frame to support the assessment and accountability. It's aligned with the program goals, the state content, and the language standards. It collects and analyzes data to measure program accountability. The student progress is systematically measured and reported, and it communicates with appropriate contributors about the results. Continuing on with guiding principles, the Strand 5, staff quality and professional development. It contains 3 principles: to recruit and retain high-quality dual language staff, to provide high-quality professional development, to collaborate with other organizations to ensure staff quality. Strand 6, the family and community. Principle 1, a responsive base for positive, active, and ongoing relations. Principle 2 promotes family and community engagement. And Principle 3, family and community are involved and viewed as vital partners. Guiding principles, Strand 7 and final, support and resources. It has 3 principles, which talks about the program is supported by all contributors, the administrators, the staff, the family, and the community. The program is equitable and effectively funded, and also the program advocates for support. Here is the reference that I used for the guiding principles. In the video Teaching and Learning Dual Language Education Classrooms developed by Elena Izquierdo, it mentions that the goals of the dual language education is for all students to become bilingual and biliterate. Biliteracy means that we have effective communication through written thoughts and ideas in 2 different languages. Teaching for biliteracy, including the implementation of the bridge, must have clear and defined content allocation plan, and this is according to BMNK and EuroC in 2013. The content allocation plan establishes that amount of time spent in each language and the language in which each content area will be taught. It also analyzes 3 elements that we need to consider in order to teach biliteracy. Students should read and write in both languages daily. The students are together for differentiated but not separated instruction. And content allocation, meaning that the content is taught in one language only, and that the content and literacy instructions are combined. Literacy Squared. Literacy Squared is both research-based and research-tested. The Literacy Squared Holistic Biliteracy Framework consists of 4 core instructional elements, which are oracy, language structure, vocabulary, and dialogue; writing, which are focused to attention to teaching children the art and the craft of writing in 2 languages; reading, using methods to teach Spanish reading that are authentic to the Spanish language; and meta-language, thinking and talking about language, cross-language connections, and how Spanish and English are similar and different. All 4 elements are connected to one another in both Spanish and English literacy instruction within and across language environments. The strategies for biliteracy development, one of them is Laura Lara, and it increases the reading fluency and comprehension through repeated reading. The Dictado is a cross-language strategy to refine language arts skills both in English and in Spanish. And Así se dice, it validates the translation and engages students in study of language across cultures and languages. Moving forward, I wanted to show you an example of a dual language biliteracy schedule. And this biliteracy schedule was obtained from the Academic Language Program's dual language that was retrieved from the Isleta Independent School District. And the following schedule was obtained from Christina Bennett, the coordinator of Academic Language Programs for Isleta Independent School District, revised on August 2019. And it demonstrates the time that was spent on each language by school grade and subject. The blue is for Spanish, the green is for English, and on the bottom, the academic language development time is given in the language that the students need the most intervention. The leadership, the implementation, and the sustainability of dual language program plays a vital role for the dual language. And so in Howard et al. 2018, it mentions that effective leadership includes program advocacy, the oversight of the model development, the planning, the coordination, the professional development, and the appropriate allocation of funding. As school leaders, they need to practice distributive leadership and share the responsibilities amongst other school officials for the success of the dual language program. This was explained by Mencken 2017. Then De Matthews and Izquierdo in 2018, they say that school leaders must challenge the subtractive programs and be willing to transform the learning opportunities and promote dual language education, meaning that school leaders must be strong advocates for the dual language. School leaders must implement equitable resources, distribution, parent leadership, culturally relevant curriculum, and professional development and desegregation of the programs. As school leaders, they must also support the needs of students to ensure equitable and excellent education for English language learners, as well as to provide all the parents with the opportunities to engage in the program and in the decision making. This was by De Matthews and Izquierdo 2018. Conclude this presentation, I wanted to leave you with a very important thought, that dual language connects families. Viva la familia. I wanted to share a small letter that my niece, who just started the dual language programs, wrote for my parents who do not speak English. Cada vez que estoy contigo, soy feliz. Abuela, tu cocina es la mejor. Abuelo, es increíble cómo aprendes inglés para poder hablar con nosotros. La forma en que tú mudas a América para mi madre y mis tías. Ustedes son tan valientes y cariñosos con nosotros. Los amo. Emma. These are the references that I used for my presentation. And this is the second page of my references for this presentation. Thank you very much for your time. Muchísimas gracias por su atención.